Hello and welcome. My name is Alan, and today we are back with more Autobiography of a Freedom Writer. I couldn't remember the name of the book for a moment there. Today we're jumping in to the start of chapter 3. Let's get into this. The chapter is called Education of the Mississippi Negro. I was a student at Tougaloo College in 1958 when I first became aware of the struggle to protect civil rights. And I was moved to join the NAACP and volunteer to become a field worker. The primary objective of the movement in Mississippi was to mobilize more blacks to register to vote. At that time, it was commonly known that less than 5% of black Mississippians were registered. To create public outrage over the indignation blacks faced when they attempted to register, the NAACP began sending organizers, sometimes alone, but mostly in groups of two, into the small towns and the hamlets throughout the state to begin the very dangerous and difficult task of organizing and training black residents to stand up to the insults they knew they would encounter. Simply registering to vote did not just require confronting the intimidating tactics of a county registrar or other whites in which um, victim intimidating in which vicinity. You also had to give a written or oral interpretation of the section of the state constitution. Different registrars could choose different sections. Besides that, any black who asserted his or her rights in this way was likely to be fired, evicted, denied credit, beaten, experience a firebombing of the family home, or be killed. A tiny black middle class comprised of school teachers, independent business people, and those who had been able to retain ownership of land was fully intimidated as well. Among them were a few courageous individuals who stood up for their rights and those of others. They were always the question. There was always the question. How or what could be done to get more blacks to break through such a rigid barrier? Then, if that were accomplished, what good would it do? Only in the South did black Americans face a dichotomy at home and heart. Medgar Evers was fond of saying, "My love, we love the land same as the Southerner, but we love first class citizenship um, best." The Tougaloo experience taught me that freedom was only a short distance away. It was up to me to go and find it. The college has a long tradition of upholding the principles of dignity and the human being and the right to equal treatment under the law. It was founded by the American Missionary Association in 1869 for long after a time when teaching enslaved blacks had been extremely dangerous. Historic Tougaloo, located northwest of the state capital of Jackson, um, rests on a 500-acre campus anchored by giant red oak trees draped in falls of Spanish moss. A private college, it was regarded as something of an oasis amidst the harsh realities of the racist divide that had existed in Mississippi. Students are provided a classical liberal arts education. The faculty is progressive in its teaching. The professors, many of them white and imported from East Coast schools, usually have religious and or political beliefs that support racial equality. Among the faculty members during my time there, Dr. Ernst Borinsky, a sociologist and one of the top writers and thinkers in his field, allowed students free rein to express ideas about black civil rights. He was one of about 50 Jewish scholars who fled Nazi Germany and taught in historically black colleges in the United States. Looking back on his influence at Tougaloo, Dr. Joyce Ladner, a dear classmate with whom I worked in the movement, recalled Borinsky had an affinity with blacks because Jews experienced a similar persecution. She is herself a widely recognized scholar who became the first female president of Howard University in Washington, D.C. Borinsky, who stayed at Tougaloo for 35 years, helped to establish the college's reputation for rejecting the system of racial exclusion, working with then chaplain Reverend John Mangum. Borinsky set up an exchange program with students at Millsaps, the white Methodist college in Jackson. In addition to the exchange with Millsaps, the administrators at Tougaloo admitted a few northern white students to its campus, reacting to a report in Jackson's daily newspaper about the latter move. Local whites dubbed the college Cancer College for its integration and progressive ideas. A small group of students at Tougaloo, only about 15 or 20 of approximately 350 students, initiated the first public civil rights demonstrations in Mississippi. Working with the NAACP in 1961, we launched sit-ins, picketing and boycotting of stores that refused to serve or hire blacks. Our student activism kept pace with the national movement, culminating in the work of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, and effectively establishing a tradition of activism at Tougaloo. Because the college is private, we were only able to act with less fear of reprisal than our counterparts at state supported black universities. I always knew there could never be justification for the evil forced upon us in the South. I also knew that we would succeed in our efforts to clear the way for blacks in Mississippi to be treated as citizens in a democratic society, a free of fear and intimidation. However, I felt that we needed a new vehicle for change. My break from the reasoning of the past began to fall in the fall of 1958, sitting in the mass meeting held in the Black Church in Jackson. One typically went to these meetings to follow the freedom movement. I was a mere freshman when a friend and I decided to go to one at Pearl Street African Methodist Episcopal Church on September the 23rd, 1958. Naturally, having moved to the city from a rural community, where there was no open discussion of the movement, I was curious. They started off singing electrifying freedom songs. People were clapping and rocking. And when you walked out of there, you'd be ready to get involved. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. Little did I know then that while I was enjoying the meeting, blissfully unaware, representatives of the Sovereignty Commission were outside recording the license numbers of all the cars in the parking lot. Because there wasn't a lot of people from Tougaloo or anywhere in the state or country participating in the movement, I took notes on what was said at all meetings I attended. I knew that something extraordinary was happening, and I went to each and every meeting I possibly could. What follows summarizes the content of a printed program from one meeting and my personal notes. Mass meeting. The program included a 12-year-old girl who had been arrested for boarding the front seat of a bus and was presented as follows. Program. Guest Lillian Smith, author, white man, and his conscience. Devotion by Reverend Paul Brooks. Prayer song, We Shall Overcome. Introduction to young Miss Jessie Devens. Story of her arrest. Miss Jessie Devens, aged 12, a student at Campbell High School, was arrested for boarding a bus in Mississippi for an unknown destination. She was asked by the bus driver and eventually the police to move to the back. She did not. She was placed under arrest, removed from the bus, and taken to jail. At trial, Miss Devens explained to the judge that she had boarded the bus and sat in the front seat. The judge told her that if she came before him again, he would send her to Oakland, the Oakley Training School. She informed the judge that she did not mind going to Oakland, and every trip that she would make would be made sitting in the front seat of the bus. Announcement. Robert Martin, 22 years old, polio victim, was arrested and charged with drunkenness, needs help. Speaker, Minister R.L.T. Smith. Three-part subject. One God and His Holy Word, our Bible. 2, the Constitution of the United States of America. 3, I love Mississippi, but I love first-class citizenship best. We as a people have been denied the rights of the Constitution too many times. Segregation teaches hate and inferiority. The Mississippi Citizens Council is a dog council organized by two ministers. We owe it to God, state, and the country to help to find ourselves. Whites in this country feel surprised to all other or feel superior to all other races. We must love them if we expect them to love us. This task requires faith, courage, and love. Segregation must go. Citizens must be protected. We must use our selective buying and selling power. God can help us destroy hate, bigotry, and segregation. Become aware of your rights as citizens of the United States. We want to walk in dignity, walk like a man, talk like a man, get all the education that's possible. Our forefathers wanted every uh, wanted very hard, worked very hard for this country. Their money was taken to help build medical and law schools. Please join hands, hearts, and intelligence. Their ministers are speaking from a theological throne. They never come down and say, you must love everybody. We must examine ourselves first. We must act first class. Stop jumping and hollering. Leave all the old uh, bundles at home. Sit down and shut your mouths. Leave your lunch buckets at home. Who wants to sit beside someone who is salivating and chewing tobacco? If we keep Christ in our hearts, we can't fail. Be mindful that God is no respecter of persons. He loves Governor Ross Barnett just as well as you. We need men to tell the world what we want. How can three people tell what all Negroes wanted or all Negroes want? Everybody needs to speak up. So many people haven't done anything to support the cause. It's always that faithful few. If they can create laws to help bring factories to Mississippi, then they can help bring peace to Mississippi. Pick up posters today at 6 p.m. for 8 a.m. tomorrow, Saturday. We'll go ahead and end this episode here. It's already been a long one. But yeah, you can see he's starting to really get involved with the civil rights movement in Mississippi. And his push and ideas are very similar to MLK. You know, we have to love them for them to love us. You hear similar talk from MLK, from Martin Luther King Jr. Be peaceful, be respectful. Again, similar themes running through many of MLK's speeches and writings. because, of course, he himself was very religious and was fighting the fight in Georgia and Alabama. Uh, but yeah, you see so many similarities, and like we know, King was around. He was early in his push in 1958 when Thomas Armstrong, the writer of this book, uh, was first in college as part of the and became part of the SNCC in 1958. Because I believe Brown versus the Board of Education was 1956. But yeah, King was in his early uh, stage of protests for civil rights. And of course, he would be there for most of the 1960s before he was tragically taken from the world. But yeah, this is the early peaceful push for civil rights. And like I said, we see several people from different angles. Armstrong here in Mississippi, King, he did some work in Georgia, mainly around Atlanta, where his father had a church, but he spent a lot of his time in Alabama. He would go to other states and hold protests as well, but yeah, a lot of recruitment and effort was being put into the southern states. So, but I'm going to go ahead and end this episode here. I appreciate y'all for watching. As always, educate thyself, think, read, study, learn. Someone tries to tell you something you have trouble believing, ask them to cite their sources. I'll see you all in the next one. Until then, later.